Welcome to another edition of the Cherry Mercado podcast. And today we are with an amazing woman. I've been wanting to meet her and it's great to have her in person. Great to have her in the studio today. Marami siya masyadong titles. There's a lot of things that she does and we'll try to tackle it one by one. We might not be able to tackle everything in an hour, but we will try. Miss Jennilee, Austria-Bonifacio. Hi, Jennilee.
Hi, kumusta?
Welcome to the FTV studios. Well, you're not new to the FTV studios.
No,
you're one of our favorite guests
Veteran
here.
na ako.
Yeah,
Dalawang
yeah.
beses na.
Okay, so you are a writer, you are a researcher, you are a public speaker, you are a consultant for Ontario school boards, you teach teachers, and I heard that you make teachers cry.
I do.
How does a woman like you do that? Okay, so I don't even know where to start. But like, how did your passion for helping the Filipino community start?
Mhm. So, pinanganak ako dito sa Canada. So, usually it's a weird transition, I guess, from being born in Canada and like in Sarnia, which didn't have a very, very big diverse population.
So Sarnia is a place in Ontario.
Yes, Sarnia is a place at the very bottom of Ontario.
Okay.
It's known for oil refineries. So when I was growing up there were 200 Filipino families, which is pretty good.
Mhm.
And they were really concerned, I think, when we were growing up that we weren't going to be super Filipino. So when I was around grade 9, we started learning how to dance. And that was the beginning of everything.
Filipino folk
Yeah, we
dance.
started learning
Okay.
itikitik, tinigling, singkil, all of that.
How wonderful naman
Yeah.
the elders. I mean, the generation who were teaching this.
Yeah,
Okay.
then we had to perform like for the Kalayaan shows and like around the counties. And that was really my entryway into learning what it is to be Filipino, not just Filipino, but Filipino in Canada.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. You weren't born in the Philippines,
No.
but your ties to your culture was born out of the generation of your parents teaching the kids in your area snippets of the Filipino culture. And you said it in a way that made me think na your perspective of it is a Filipino growing up in Canada with the roots. Kasi marami yung parang, of course, you look for your identity, right? When you've grown up here and then a lot of your parents, a lot of your elders assimilated and sometimes nakakalimutan na yung Filipino culture.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you started with that kind of an environment and then how
So
did
yeah,
it...
yung talagang
how-
origin story ko. Tapos,
oo.
afterwards, I ended up working with newcomers. And I remember the first time I was working in an employment help center with immigrants. And I just realized how hard it was for them. And I didn't realize that I didn't realize how different their experience would be, if just because they're coming from another country. I didn't think it would be that hard. And I was so young at the time. And of course, I remember calling my parents on the payphone and just crying and crying. And I thought, why is it so difficult for them? Like Canada should be better for these people. They're so smart and they have so much to give. And my parents were just, yeah, that's really how it is. And so then I started to think, okay, how can I... Like I'm made in Canada, right? And I'm going to dedicate my life really to helping newcomers and figuring out how we can make Canada better for them, right? And then after that, starting with the employment centers, I ended up getting my master's in immigration and settlement at TMU, so Toronto Metropolitan University, and then
Master's in Immigration and Settlement. Okay.
Yeah, we were only, I think, the 4th cohort, so it was still a new one. Yeah, and then after that, I started working in schools with Filipino newcomers.
If I may just put a pause right there. When you said you started working when you were calling your mom, your parents about stories that you'd hear of new immigrants to Canada, how did you get there even? Why did you think...
how did I end up in this employment center?
Yes, in the employment center.
Okay, so when I was 20 years old, I took a year off of school and I did something called the Katimavik program. So Kitimavik, it means meeting place. And then what it does is they take kids from all across Canada. And then for 9 months, you have to live together and move to a different province every 3 months. And you have to volunteer during the day. And then at nighttime, you have to do like community work with your group.
That's a beautiful program.
It is, but it's really hard because you don't go home. There's no TV.
This is part of school?
No, it was just like an extra year off that is just to kind of help students, like I think they're 17 to 21, to figure out like where they should be in their lives, and to kind of expose them to different parts of Canada and to different like ways that you can help different communities. So with my group, we went to St. Catharines and then to Quebec and then to BC. And that was how I learned about different parts of Canada for no money. And also just figuring out how to make a gap year really, really worthwhile. So that was how I started.
Okay, so let's go back to the timeline when you were telling us about after the employment center. What happened?
I went back to my undergrad. I finished my BA in international studies
in TMU, and
then I went to TMU after to do immigration and settlement. And then I got my dream job, which is still the best job. I really think so. So a settlement worker in schools is a really, really special position because it's like you're a guidance counselor, but only for newcomers. And so they put you into schools with really high like immigrant and refugee populations. And then you're so, you really have to be on the ground with them. You're really on the front line with them because they don't view you as a teacher. You're not the one grading them. And you're kind of more like an ate to them, right? And you have this position in the school where you're kind of the bridge between these ESL students and then the educators, right? But then when I started out, I was the first Filipino settlement worker in most schools, or first settlement worker in most schools I was at. So really, you're building these blocks from nothing. And, at first they're giving you just a random desk in the side of, just a room with all the storage boxes. But you make it work, right? And you try to bring in different community groups for your students, and you try to go into the classrooms where they are, and you present to them about the things that they might need to know, and you run after school programs, and you're just trying to show them everything that there is in Toronto. Because when I moved to Toronto myself, I remember I had a really hard time at first because I came here as a grad student and I didn't know very many people, just my one roommate from high school. And I was so upset at first because it was really difficult. And she said to me, if you're bored in Toronto, you're doing something wrong. Because she said there's so much to do in the city, so you can't just wait for it to happen. You have to be the one that makes it happen. And I thought, okay, I could do that. And then that was the lesson I kind of brought to all of my students. I'm like, if we're bored, we're doing something wrong. So let's find out how not to be bored, how not to be alone at home, and how to be happier in the city.
Do you know that's a word that my daughters are careful not to say at home?
Bored?
That they're bored. Because if they say that, this mother will give them tons of things. They're like, you're bored? I can't believe it. Bored is for the uncreative. I mean, that was my motherhood statement.
That's a good statement. Because maglinis ka, sige. Kung bored ka.
Diba? Be creative. I mean, you can just create so many scenarios in your head, right? And you're daydreaming. I'd rather you daydream than you're bored. Okay, they were sharing their stories with you, pretty much.
Yeah, and these students were so forthcoming with me because I was so young, and they didn't think of me as an authority figure. And I learned so much about them. And one of the things that really stood out to me was how there was such a big divide, because the teachers would say, if it was a Filipino school, the teachers would be like, oh, we don't have to worry about the Pinoy students because they're always smiling, they're always happy. We don't have to think about them. There's all the other kids that are having issues, but not the Filipino kids. And as we know, that's not true, right? The more that you get to know our community, the more we will open up to you and tell you what's on our minds. And so I started to get to know all these Filipino students, and it was always the same story, right? for these students are all caregivers' kids. And so their moms had come here maybe 8, 10 years ago. And then now the kids are here, and it's a really hard thing, right? Because it's like new school, new house, new country, new parent. And it's just too much for some of them to do, especially the younger ones. And actually, even the older ones, sometimes it's even harder.
Yeah, they have their own set of issues at different ages.
Different ages. And like, because they've already made so much, of leeway in their lives in the Philippines, they've already got their barcadas there, they have a jowa, everything is
I love
great.
the terms that you're
of course,
like throwing in here.
Because it's like, parang nasakit sila because it's like they come here and then talagang wala na. And they have a lot of resentment. So I've had some students where they told their parents, I want to go back home. And some parents said, no, we worked really hard for you to be here, right? And other parents, they said, sige, try, go back and see what happens. And it was like a big process, right? To try to help them navigate going back to the Philippines and then eventually coming back here because, education and like healthcare and job prospects, they eventually do come back. But
right. Because even as you're saying this, even your journey as even that gap year that you were saying, it's like for me who's still I just lived here in Canada recently. I'm not even here 2 years yet. I've been visiting, my family have been living here, but knowing those services, those opportunities for younger kids that they can, the youth that they can do, that sounded very alien to me because there's no such opportunity. There's no such window for activities like that in the Philippines. And even your role in the schools. Well, we don't have a lot of immigrants. We do have some international students there once in a while. But in other concerns, we have very, different but serious concerns as well in the student population in the Philippines. We won't get services like this. We won't get... We do have guidance counselors, which is, a staple in schools. But what are the other common stories that still resonate until now? Because this was like years ago, right?
So many. So the one that I will never, ever forget, there was this boy and he was having such a hard time, 19 na, grade 12. Dapat he should be thinking about college, university, right? At saka matalino siya talaga. So then I'm meeting him and his teachers are saying, he's having a hard time. He's not coming to school. He's talking about dropping out. And so I brought him to my office. I said, what's going on? And he said, do you know what I do after school? And I said, no, what? Tell me. He said, I have a job. I said, okay, what's your job? And he said, I go down from Keelan Finch all the way down to the financial district and I clean the banks. And I clean the bank offices because that's what everyone I know does. That's what my mom does. That's what my titas do. That's what everyone in my family is doing. And he said, why would I try going to school if I know that's all I'm going to do here in Canada? And I just said, can you imagine being like so young and thinking, this is it? Yeah, yun lang. I'm just going to be cleaning offices for the rest of my life. And it was so heartbreaking for me to think, because his network is so limited, he doesn't see outside of it, right? So we even have that with some of the other students where they're, we know in high school, right? Usually it's kind of like pie in the sky when your teacher says, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the kids are like, oh, maybe I want to be an artist or I want to be a dancer. It's usually something fun, right? But then you get to the Filipino kids and they would say, oh, I want to be a PSW. I want to be a med tech. And I'm not saying those are bad jobs. Right. It's just you can see a very big difference in the way that the Filipino kids answer versus the other kids. Maybe that's good that they're realistic, but also, are they saying, I want to be a med tech, I want to be a PSW, because they don't know there are other options?
Like, are you dreaming? Where are the daydreams? Where are the... Yeah, like someone, I recently talked to someone and she was like, when I was a kid, you know what I wanted to be? A fortune teller. Ooh. Because for her, it was so much fun. That kind of imagination, right? She ended up as like a visual artist, but like, it's just fun. Like when you're a kid and you think of all these possibilities. I want to be a fireman because, it's so cool. And like, theirs are so practical.
Super
like,
practical.
I want to be a PS. It's so like, specific too, like a
Yeah.
PSW. Okay.
Mhm.
So you've dedicated your life into being of service to this kind of community.
Yeah.
It has touched you, but it's also because of your root of living in a community that was pretty much ideal
Mhm.
for a Filipino in Canada. I mean, correct me if
Yeah,
I'm
no,
wrong,
it
but you were a
was.
kid that had a strong network
Yeah, we had a
of
strong network. And the other thing that really got me when I moved to Toronto was how different we were academically. So where I was from, because the Filipino community were very tight, right? So everyone knows each other's chismes, of course. And what do people chismes about is usually how good their kids are doing in school.
yeah.
And
The Filipino parents would be like,
Right?
right? My daughter got my daughter also got this.
Oh yeah, right. And then also because the Filipino or the community itself in Sarnia is small, like you end up in the newspapers, right? They don't have a lot to report about. They report about kids doing good things, and so I just grew up in this environment where Filipinos were doing really well. Like they were valedictorian, they were like head of the classes. They were winning all the awards. Of course, you would go to university. That wasn't
Yeah.
even an
question.
option.
Yeah,
Anything
yeah.
else, like of course, you have to leave home at 18 because there's no university in Sarnia. So we were all on this path together, right? That we knew we would have to leave home, go to university, make our parents proud, get a good job, and then not come back to Sarnia because there weren't a lot of jobs out there. So, and then I moved to Toronto, and I'm in these schools with these newcomer kids, and they're just dropping out, and they're skipping, and they're not doing well. And I was shocked. Talagang na-shocked ako because I was
Mind
like,
blown.
I've
Yeah,
never seen this before. Like, we should be at the top of every class. What's happening? And the teachers thought it was so weird that I was so upset about this because they said every school is like this, And I said, no, it doesn't have to be like that. And part of what I was really wanting to do at the time was I wanted Filipinos to be in like positions of leadership. So I was really pushing the kids to, go for student council and like get into all those activities where there are no Pinoys. Like, kahit wala, it's okay. You can be the first one.
Yeah, you became the tita of everyone.
Yeah, you're just trying to push them out. You're like, you don't have to all stay under the staircase with all the other Pinoys and you're just on your
Yeah.
phones. It can be better than this. High school can be a lot of fun. And I want you to make friends that are not only Filipino too, right? That's what Canada is about. So, yeah, and it was a lot of just kind of hand-holding and sometimes
Right.
just straight pushing to make them go, right?
So what were your other vehicles
Yeah.
apart from being the counselor right there in the school? You did other things to further, that vision of yours, that dream of yours for Filipino youth. Is it just the youth or even the older
the
ones?
parents do? Of
The
course.
parents then.
No, sometimes the parents are the ones that need guidance the most. Because
Okay.
they finished, especially the moms, they finished the caregiver program. Tapos sabi nila, oh, what am I going to do next? And I'm like, okay, there are so many upgrading programs for you. Some of them are even free. Some of them will even pay you to be there. And we can try, like, whatever you were in the Philippines, we can try to upgrade again, right? And some of them would say, "Uy, sige na nga, like, let's try everything." And other ones would say, "Ay, di wag kasi, hindi ko marunong mag-English, and none of my friends are doing that, so I don't want to either. At saka kailangan ko mag-remit, wala akong pera, and, the time for studying, I would rather be working kasi nandito ng mga anak ko, ng asawa ko, mahirap kami. It's like they have a lot of reasons, and they're good reasons, but at the same time, sometimes you're just like, if you really wanted to fix this problem of Filipino kids not wanting to go to school, the root is really the parents, right? If you can get like that mom into a better job, if you can get her upgraded, a better mindset, like and if she can model even how it could be to progress in your career and like get a better job, be 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, she's home after school, you could help with the homework, you have weekends together, you can spend time together, get to know each other again. Like that would be the ideal. It doesn't happen a lot. And sometimes, it's hard. It's hard to try to convince them. Like,
but how did you do that? Under which network, under which position did you do that? Did you reach
Oh,
out to the adults, to the parents?
yeah, this is from the Settlement Worker in Schools program.
Mm.
So when you
Mhm.
are working in there, you work, well, if you're in high school, you mostly with the students, and then the elementary, you work only with the parents. And sometimes they're the same families, of course.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's so interesting because sometimes, the Filipino moms, especially, they know where they want to be, they know where their kids want to be, but they feel like they can't yet, because they say, oh, I was working for this family for so long, nahihiya ako if I leave them now because the kids need me. They're going to start, JK, they're going to start grade 1. I want to be there for them because I've been there since they were babies. It's also like they feel a need to be part of that family, still the employer's family. Kahit it would be
This
better
is
for
so
them
Filipino,
to
no?
do other
Oo.
things na kasi nandito nung mga anak mo. So it's kind of like, I see why it's so hard for them because it's like they're getting pulled in two directions, right? Yeah.
And your the way you are, your enthusiasm is really very contagious, and I guess you need that also because this can drain your energy. I mean, listening to people. I mean, sometimes when you want to help, because it's also, I also grew up in my parents are public servants in a sense that it's just ingrained in us, like helping other people, and they're both lawyers, but they've always worked. There was always a pro bono thing going on all our lives. We would have people come in and give us kaing-kaing of mangoes or chickens, live chickens, or these are like what they give to my parents for their free legal service. The stories can bring you down too.
Totally.
Right?
And that's actually what happened in the next part of my story. So then, because it was like when you're a settlement worker in schools, you're only in 3 schools a week. And you're helping the same kids over and over again, right? And you just go to the same schools. And I thought, okay, there is something bigger happening here that we need to address. And like, I feel like right now I'm like mopping up a floor, but I should be turning off a tap.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, so there's something else that has to happen on a bigger scale.
Right.
And so I was so heartbroken. I left the job and I ended up doing research in two different ways. One of them was with this project with the York Center for Asian Research, where we studied Filipinos across Canada to see what is it about us that we have what's called downward mobility. So we're the only immigrant group that has this, where we actually earn less than our parents did, and we attain less academically than our parents did. The longer we're in Canada, we are downwardly mobile.
Okay.
So what is it about us why is this happening, right? So the parents are coming with like a university degree, for instance, and then the kids are going for college or they're just going straight to the workforce.
Right.
What's happening here? So we did a research project on that. And then the other one was with the Halton Catholic Board, where they asked us to come and survey their Filipino populations in different schools and really ask the parents some very hard questions like, how much money do you make? How many jobs do you have? What's your relationship like with your kid? And also ask the kids some hard questions like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And do you know anyone in that job already? And what could your school do better for you? And so between these two research positions, I thought, okay, now I know how to turn the tap off. Now I'm not going to be mopping the floor. I'll be turning off the tap.
Okay. And so you found out those things. You found out the hard. What were the results?
There were, in a nutshell, the results were, one of them was a really big lack of role models. And since then, this has been a couple years now, the community has really done beautiful things with the role models. I can't even tell you how many great conferences we've been to and youth events and just the amount of force that the new generation has come up with to try to help the ones coming. It's been incredible. Like for instance, what's coming up soon is Pinoy San Parliament is coming up soon. So they saw that there was a hole, right, in politics. So how many Filipinos are in politics? Not that many, right? So what they ended up doing was all of the different Filipino organizations in different universities, they came together and they do this yearly conference. And they do it in Ottawa. They do a tour of the parliament. And then there's all these leadership workshops the whole time. So that way students can meet different role models in all these different industries. And that way it's like, this is your starting point, right? Like we gave you who you need to know and you can ask the questions you need to ask and now you can start.
Yeah, and just seeing them in those roles is already a big thing. But when you talk about this, is this a policy that was made in the school board?
No. For the Pinoy San Parliament?
Yeah.
No, it was just an initiative that a lot of the different Filipino student organizations did.
Oh, nice. Within Ontario,
within University
Toronto?
of Ottawa, and then
okay.
a lot of other schools as well.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's really good. You guys should go.
Yeah, actually. Where's your being a writer? Where did that come into the picture? It was
So that came across because part of my job as a settlement worker in schools was to do something called digital stories. And digital stories are basically like 2 to 3 minute long movies you make with the students. And then you ask them only one question. And so the question is, what was the moment in your life when everything changed? You can't ask them, what's your life story? That's too big, right? Because they're going to say, I was born and
Yeah.
And that's not what we want. We want to see the moment when everything in your life changed. So because these are newcomers, usually it's, coming to Canada, I got off the plane and, it was so cold, that kind of thing. But sometimes those stories that is not the story. And it's something else like I got off the plane and, I met my stepfather for the first time. I didn't even know he existed. My mom didn't even tell me that she'd married again. And now I have a sibling and I didn't know. And when you're working with kids and you're trying to pull out their stories, right? A lot of it just stays with you, right? And you know this as an interviewer, right? The more you meet the people, it's like parts of their stories, they end up inside of your brain and you can't get rid of them. And so that's how writing began for me because I thought, okay, if I can't sleep at night, this is what I'm going to do.
You're bursting
I'm bursting. Yeah, I went to, I signed up at the Humber School for Writers and the first day there, I met my mentor, Karen Connolly, and I said to her, like, I'm just bleeding stories. I don't know what to do. I can't fix this. I need to put them somewhere. And she said, I will help you triage them. Don't worry. And yeah, that was the beginning of everything.
That's great. That's great that we document this. Also part of what I'm learning about Filipino history and the lack thereof, because I have a daughter who's very interested in history, and there's some frustration when she tries to look up more about Philippine history and she doesn't see as much resources as she can with Western history, for example. Of course, the British have documented it so much, and a lot of us in the Philippines don't really document things. That's why I'm so glad to hear that you're writing what you are hearing from or the experiences that you have been hearing from all these people who have moved here. Okay, so it's a big thing. What is your mission now? What is your big mission, and what are the smaller things to get there, to get to the big one?
Oh my gosh, the big mission is just well, I don't know if there is a big mission. Like what would that look like in the world, I guess, just to get these stories out, I guess, into the world and like just to build empathy. That's really all I want. When I teach teachers, like that's the main thing. That's all I want from them. I just want you to come out of this feeling empathy for this community that you thought only smiles.
Right.
And I guess that is my bigger mission. The smaller mission is to finish my edits and get the book out and, and finish this. And
okay, let's
talk to more teachers and
Right. Okay, so two things. We'll get to the book, but how do you make teachers cry? What's the story behind that? How does Jennilee...
make teachers cry. It's true. When I started finding out all the ways that the Filipino community is connected and disconnected as well, I thought, okay, I need to teach teachers this. Because the problem in schools when the kids are having issues, right? The problem is not always the kids. Sometimes it's the system itself, right? And I'm not the type of person who's going to protest outside of an office door. I'm going to make you have a session with me. We're going to do a professional development session. You're going to pay me. We're going to do this and we're going to really do it well. And so when I go into schools, there's something that I do before I even talk to anybody is I survey all the kids, the Filipino kids, because I said to myself, okay, if I were a teacher, you know, they're already very strapped for time. Alam ko yan, they're very, very, very busy. So we need to make this as impactful as possible right off the bat. So then I'll bring in this survey that I make with the teachers beforehand. They give it to all the students, and it's basically like the one I was telling you about. Like, what can your school do better for you? What's your relationship with your mom? What's your relationship like with your dad? What job do you have after school? How many hours? All of these kind of things. And so that way, when we walk into this school to talk to all these teachers, it's really like a lion's den sometimes. There's 100 teachers in there, and they're super busy. They don't want to be there.
Yeah.
But you have to win them over. And then I tell them, all of the data I'm about to show you is your own students. And then that's the buy-in. That's the buy-in moment, right?
Because tell me that and, you know, you have my attention.
Yeah, like these are not kids that you've never met before, right? And so that is how I start out. And the other thing that I do is when I also do the sessions with the students. So Filipino Talks, there's two different kinds of it. One is for teachers only, and then one is for students only. And so with the students, there's a couple different workshops that I do, but one of them is the reunification workshop, because that's the biggest problem, right? That the students are having. Getting their relationships with their parents on track again is really hard. So one of the projects that I do with them is called Letters to Mama. So we make a video. The kids don't know, though, that it's a video. So let me explain. So all the kids are around in their different groups,
What
right?
age
And then
is
this
this?
is high school.
Okay.
And I give them all a piece of paper and I tell them, okay, write a letter to your mom. It's not going to be sent to her. So write whatever you want. You can write it in English. You can write it in Tagalog. It's fine. Just be honest. And I tell them, and the best letter is going to get a prize. So I make it into a game. And so the kids usually will write this. Dear Mama, I hate you. I hate this country. I hate this school. I want to go home. Usually that's the letter. So then I tell them, okay, part 2 to get the grand prize. Flip the paper over and now pretend to be your mom. And what would she say if she got that letter from you? Go. And so the kids will write because they
know what their parents are going to say. If there's one thing they probably know that better than what they want.
I know, right? So usually the letter back to themselves is, Dear Anak, you know, I'm so sorry you feel this way. You know, everything I've done was for you. I've sacrificed so much for you, and this is for your future. Let's spend time together. Let's talk. You know, I love you. I've loved you forever. I'll love you always. Love, Mama. Usually that's what the letter sounds like. And so then I take all them letters home and I read them over the weekend and I cry, of course. I just cry the whole time because they're super touching. I call my mom every time and I'm like, Mom, I'm so sorry for everything I've ever done to you. And she goes, ay, nako, ito yung mga letters to Mama na naman. Ito na naman, Jen. And she makes fun of me. But then I make it into a video. So that way, it's like every single student, I take one sentence out of their letter and I make it into a long letter. So that way it looks like one big letter to Mama and then one big letter back to Anak. And every student gets part of their letter in this video. So it's like really to show them like,
so all of the thoughts
right?
have been inputted there.
Everything is in there. Just a little because
the video is
so
you reading the letter?
So it's I filmed it going from the school to an apartment building, and then from the apartment building going to where the mom would work, so an employer's house. So the footage is basically like what it would look like if a mom was going to her work, what she would be thinking about talking to her kid and her kid. And then what would the kid be talking about in his or her head going back home after school. And so then we take this video, you show it to teachers and they cannot not cry.
I haven't seen it yet I'm like, don't cry.
Yeah, that just breaks all of them. And that's how I know it's working, right? Because this is the community that you always said has no problems. They always smile, they're fine. But we show them this. I said, these are your own kids. These are pictures of your own school. And that's really a moment for them. So then we can build. And then the next part of Filipino Talks is all joy. It's more like solutions. Here are the authors you should buy, like all the books that you should buy. Here are the guest speakers you could book
for the teachers.
Yeah. Here are like the activities that are working well in other school boards that you could do. And it's just basically like, here is your how-to guide to make this better, because I can't stay in the school forever, right? I'm not there like as a full-time staff member, and I move around. So here are all your tools. Go.
But how do they deal with this with students that are mixed? I mean, they're not all Filipinos in that class. So they just get this as an input out of all the things that they can do, right?
Just and every single teacher, no matter which discipline they're in, like they're all looking for how to reach like populations, right? Even if it's just they just want to know, like a French teacher, for instance. You wouldn't think a French teacher would need to know how to reach Filipinos, right? But there are Filipinos in her class, and some Filipino poems have been translated into French. So why not? If you're going to be looking at French anyway, why not have it be a Filipino writer who's been translated into French, right? There are ways to integrate it into the curriculum, even if the class is not all Filipino. And I always tell them, like, I know what it's like to not be in an all Filipino class. Like, I didn't grow up in a place where it was like a million of us. And by the time I hit grade 12, I was the only girl of color in the whole grade. So like, I understand when they say like, I don't know if it's going to work for the kids. But the thing is, it won't work if you're just doing it one time just as a novelty.
Right.
But if you're really building it into the curriculum, I'm not even just talking about Filipino stuff, but if you're looking at diversity, right? How can you get really diverse speakers into your school? And how can you get these different activities to happen that will reach different populations? And how can you make that bridge, right, between the kids that are of one's ethnicity and ones that are not? Just build understanding, right? And have fun doing it. I always tell them, this is not work. This shouldn't feel like work to you. It should feel like a fun opportunity to make the kids more engaged. And that's all I want to do.
That's amazing. So this is what Filipino Talks do. Because I've been reading about Filipino, that you started Filipino Talks, right? It's good to hear from you what that's about, and that's amazing. Where has it gone now? Is it still, they're still doing that? Are you still very much into it?
Yeah. So the Filipino Talks, there's now offshoots as well. So now we started doing virtual tours and in-person tours of Little Manila. So I bring people to Bathurst and Wilson, and that's usually mostly reserved for like guest lectures for university students that want to learn more about our community through like geography and space and place. So that's one offshoot. And then the other ones are stuff that are for youth, but they're more geared towards role models. So there's other, so I told you earlier, there's a reunification workshop, right? With the students. There's two more after that. The other one is all role models, because in the actual survey I give the kids, I ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? And what do you know anyone in that job already? Right? Usually it's no. And usually the jobs, you can probably guess. What do you think the jobs they want to have when they grow up?
Well, it depends. If they, like what you were saying earlier, they might want to be like their parents. Or, I don't know, maybe teachers, maybe. Yeah.
Sometimes. Usually it's doctor, lawyer, nurse. And then something in the arts and engineer, usually. And
these are very Filipino choices.
Super Filipino choices. That's okay. So then I'll bring in Filipinos who are a doctor and a lawyer and a nurse and an engineer and someone in the arts. And then we do a whole talk show with them. And afterwards, because Filipino kids, they get shy, right? They don't want to raise their hand in front of everybody. So then we do breakout groups, and the kids have to rotate to each person's table, and then they can have 5 kids to one role model and talk one by really how many years did it take? Like, do you regret it? How hard was it for you? They can ask all those questions, and I love that. And then the second part of this is then the third part of this is the next talk show, which is about community involvement. So then I'll find the different frontline workers in that area, like say it's the YMCA, for instance, like when some of those big nonprofits, and I'll say, okay, do you need any volunteers for your programs, or are you making programs? What do you want to do with these kids? And so they'll come and they'll present. They'll say, okay, if you come to my my workshops, we'll do arts workshops for free. We have free cooking classes. We do field trips to like Niagara Falls, and this is so much fun. It's all for newcomers, and it doesn't cost you anything. So they'll have that time to meet those people. So it's better than just giving the kids a flyer, right? Because that's not going to work. But if they can say, oh, there's Ate Amy. Ate Amy does all this stuff, right? And I've met her now. We're friends on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah.
And
okay, so they don't have to be Filipino role models. Just people who are working in that industry.
Yeah. But if I can find Filipinos,
that's better.
But,
True. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, that way, because I don't stay at the school forever, that way I know it's sustainable now. Because then at least they're in a program, right? After I leave.
So you're basically like making things happen. It's just that. It's like
just planting seeds.
Yeah. When I worked with the government before, and I realized that this was back in the Philippines, that a lot of the leaders were thinking in short term because they have to get re-elected, and it's only a 6-year term, for example, or a 3-year term, and they're only concerned within that 3 years or within that 6 years. So they're not planting seeds for long term. They just want to have their names on the boards, and they just want to take credit for whatever is possible within their term. But for those who are really concerned about what's going to happen to the future, then you don't have to take credit for it. You just, plant the seed. So these are long-term things that you're doing, and you're basically moving things. These are the things that people talk about. I mean, some of the ideas you've said, I've heard from Filipino communities when we talk to each other, but nobody has actually lifted a finger to do something about it. I mean, we think of it, we suggest it, we say, we should be doing this. We should be doing this more. Kids should be having this. School should be doing this. We should have this program. But you're actually mobilizing yourself into doing this. How did you end up with that person, with that energy, with that motivation, with that enthusiasm?
The more that you are around these kids, the more you realize how little time you have, right? Because it's just like high school is only 4 years. Like you have to make an impact fast.
These are lives we're talking about.
Yeah. And then if you're just kind of letting them go, then what happens, right? And I don't want to see this whole generation of kids just going straight into like fast food and then that's it. Like that's what you came to Canada for. There's so much here, and there's so much free stuff. I love free stuff. And just to get you into these youth leadership programs that are free, they will look good on a resume. You can apply for scholarships with that kind of stuff. Like these are just building blocks. Like to you, it might look like, oh, Ate Jen's making me sign up for an art program. But that's really how it starts, right? That's how that little seed starts. And then you become better at art, and then you become an artist, and you mentor other artists, and then later on, you're a professional artist, and you've done the thing you wanted to do. Yeah.
Is this open for everyone? For those who are listening to us right now and who are interested, who might not have been familiar with these type of programs before, where can they look for it? Is it something that's available for their kids or for they themselves?
There are so many youth programs that I love sending them to people. They can always ask me. For Filipino talks, I do them only in the schools on invitation. So I don't ask them to let me come in because I don't want that. If you approach me with your school saying, okay, did we need this? Now I know there's going to be buy-in, right? I don't knock on the doors. I don't need to do that. But so that's how it works with the schools.
Right.
But luckily, right now, especially because of the pandemic, there have been so many youth programs that have moved online. And they're free for anyone with like a permanent resident
card. So these are not even yours.
No,
I mean, these are not.
I will just promote them. I will promote everything possible.
So they go to your website if they want to.
Yeah, they could go to my website. Yeah, of course.
Get led to all these.
And they can always friend me on social media, of course. And then also, and I have another job on top of this. So I also work in communications at Together Project. This is completely separate from Filipinos, but still with newcomers. So Together Project is a project with refugees. And what we basically do is kind of similar in the fact that like the refugees come to Canada, they have a hard time. How do we make it better, right? And with Together Project, we have something called the Welcome Group Program. So basically, say, halimbawa, you're a refugee, right? You come here, you don't know anybody, and you say to yourself, okay, I really need a job. I need like youth programs. I need to find out, where is the nearest church. I need to know what's in my neighborhood. How am I going to find all this out, right? I need to practice English. So when they get sent to us, then we've had over 1,000 volunteers now. And we say to this person, okay, we will find the people in your area who are good at those things. They're good at finding jobs, and they're good at English practice, and they're good at showing you around your neighborhood. And this will be your group of 5 best friends for the next 6 months. You can text them on WhatsApp. You can have Zoom calls with them once a week. You can meet up with them if you want. You can.
So there are also volunteer opportunities for those who have been living here for a long time and want to do that for people.
For sure, yeah. And then so with this, it's like part of my job is always to find out what are the different newcomer programs coming up and always to promote them. So that's always on Together Projects, social media pages that I do.
And you're coming out with a book.
I am. Yeah, I am. Which is so exciting. Yeah.
This is your first book?
Yeah, my first book. And it was a long road for sure. It was a long road to get here.
What is it about?
So it's called Reuniting with Strangers, a novel told in stories. Reuniting with Strangers is a callback to this documentary that came out years and years ago. It's called When Strangers Reunite. And it was so good. It was about reuniting with like the caregivers, families reuniting with their families again in Canada, having a hard time. And I remember watching this in school and thinking, this was the first time I'm reading and learning about Filipinos. And it really made an impression on me. So I said, okay, now when I have a book, I'll make a tribute to this. So it's called Reuniting with Strangers. And
referring to your family that you don't really know.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah,
referring
like
to your
getting to know,
family.
reconnection with your own roots.
For sure. And so it's like, I really wanted people to look at the caregiver experience and how wide and vast and like how big of the spectrum it is, right? Because sometimes people just think, oh, caregivers, the kids come, they have a hard time. And that's basically it. But there's more than that, right? Like, so I thought, okay, let's talk about family reunification, but in terms of the ate that was, she went to Canada and she left the kids behind with her sister. And now the sister doesn't want them to go to Canada anymore because she said, now I feel like they're mine, right? And then let's talk about the lolo that's left behind because all the kids have gone to Canada now. Kailangan niya ng caregiver. So what's he going to do? Right? And let's talk about the husband. He's so lovesick and he's been waiting for this moment for 10 years to be with his wife again, his darling. But then they get back together and
it's not the same.
Yeah, it's not the same feeling. And they've both changed. He's changed. He's changed. He doesn't think he's changed, but he has. And
these are all movie plots.
For sure.
For story.
Yeah, a lot of different ways to look at the experience of it. And of course, like the one that was born in Canada. And, then the family comes here like under the caregiver program. And then she has to kind of show them around Canada. And she's like, I don't even know if you guys really want to be here. It's not that great. And let's just talk about all the different ways that caregivers have to navigate this system to be happy in Canada or not. There's even one story where the caregiver, she comes and she's hired by a cousin because I really wanted people to know that sometimes caregivers are hired by family members, right? And she comes to Quebec and her cousin is her employer now, but then they have a hard time with each other. And then she ends up having her sent back to the Philippines. And it's just, I really wanted to I guess embrace how big the experiences
Yeah,
are in the caregiver
right,
program and put a
right.
spotlight on it, right?
Right.
see, yeah.
Right. So the stories that we can are there a collection of short stories,
Mhm.
and they're all based on real stories, or some of them you've kind of morphed together.
Yeah, some of them I've morphed together from different people I've met and heard about, or members of my family, and so it's fiction for sure, but it's
Okay.
very rooted in a lot of
Yes.
nonfiction. Yeah, and then throughout the story, there's a story happening inside of all of the stories. That's why it's called a linked short story collection. So there's this one character that keeps popping up in all of the stories, and it's this little boy, and he's a real person. So when I was a settlement worker, I was working in this school, and then the teachers said, "Oh, it's so sad that you missed this family. Like they just left and they went to another school." And I said, "Oh, that's too bad." And well, what was happening with them? And they said, "Well, this caregiver mother, she was struggling so much with her kid. He came here and he was very violent and he was nonverbal. And at nighttime, she would try to put him to bed and he would just lash out at her and he would try to hit her and try to hurt himself. And he's only 5 years old. And so she would get so desperate that she had to call for help. And she would call for help for people to straitjacket him, to calm him down. And then he would go to bed. And I thought, oh my gosh, can you imagine a mom being so desperate, like that she needs to call someone to straitjacket the boy, 5 years old,
5 years
to go to bed every night so that way he can go to school the next morning. And that always stayed in my head because I thought, one, it means she doesn't know enough people. Right? Two, she doesn't know how to deal with this boy. And maybe, three, maybe this boy it's not even just like it's a behavioral problem. Maybe it's bigger than that. Maybe he genuinely
misunderstood.
Yeah, he's super misunderstood, right? And how do we kind of build empathy with this boy?
Right.
So I take this boy, this real boy, and I put him through all of the different stories, and he's the one that kind of shows people like he's kind of the metaphor for everything that's going on in like that displacement and estrangement and like labor export. And what are all of the things that are really hurting the diaspora sometimes, right? And why would this boy be so angry? People never think Filipinos are angry, and I think it's okay. I think it's okay.
The younger
for us to be
generation
angry.
are more open now to actually showing their negative feelings.
Yeah.
I mean, in my generation, or even the older ones before me, were all the smiling ones.
Yeah.
We're like, pretend it's all okay. You don't want to be a burden. You don't want the spotlight on you because you just don't deserve that much attention, or don't put the spotlight on yourself. But like, why not?
Yeah.
Why could it be on other culture? Why could it be on other people and not on us? Right? I can imagine the journey you went through. How long did you write that book?
I started in 2014, really? But then like that was a whole other book that I'm still writing. And then so this is my main tips for writers. Always write 2 books at the same time.
Really?
So that way, if you get tired of one, you can go back to the other one. You can switch back and forth. And one of them will make it to the finish line. And so this is the one that made it to the finish line. So really, it's this one actually started, the roots of it, 2014. But I honestly started writing it in 2019.
An amazing journey. I can see a series. While you were talking about the stories, I'm seeing a series, like maybe a series in Filipino TV about like those snippets of stories, like the whole possible striations and actual things that are happening in just that caregiving community, right? I mean, there are many different, now there's the international students who are coming here through that pathway. And then there's, again, like a lot of stories. It's still in the making. They're still pretty new in terms of like a lot of people going to Canada as international students. And they have their own dramas. They have a lot of dramas. It's a different set altogether.
Yeah.
But it's wonderful. I want to dig a little bit into your personal life.
Sure.
Like your life at home. Are you a mother? Are you're married?
I'm married. Yeah, I'm married. And we have a dog.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, his name is Cheeseburger.
It wasn't name. What's his nickname?
This Cheeseburger.
Cheeseburger.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just Cheeseburger. But we my husband and I, he's Filipino as well. We just came back from the Philippines last month. And it was
Oh,
so
wow.
nice to
Okay.
do Christmas and New Year's
Oh
there.
yeah, you were there over the holidays.
Yeah, and just
The
to
best.
see like, our family's been so long, right? Well, not
Mhm.
that long. I guess 2018. I try to go back every like four.
Was he from
4 years or
Sarnia?
so.
Is
No,
one of-
he was born in Quezon City, and then he came here at age 8. And
Okay.
yeah. So
Okay.
we both have a lot of family still back home.
Uh-huh.
So it's Masaya, right? And
Mhm.
and it's how it is, like the feeling of holidays is so different in the Philippines, right?
Mhm.
And it's just I have a hard time wrapping my head around.
We're still the best, I think, when it comes to Christmases.
Right?
It's crazy the way the Filipinos celebrate Christmas.
The Burr months. It's like
Yeah.
Christmas,
The
September
longest
1st.
Christmas, and it's not just
Yeah.
that. It's the whole energy. Even if there's so many things that are less than desirable in the Philippines, but when it comes to Christmas, we're just the best.
For sure.
Right? The energy is different. The giving people are even more giving. The hospitable people are even more hospitable. And the energy, the love is just all around. The sharing of food, just the sheer amount of food they're gonna feed you is enough to last you until next Christmas.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Oh my
Okay.
gosh,
So where did
yeah.
you meet your husband?
We met in Kapisanan, the Filipino Center.
No.
Yeah. So
still have a lot of
this is before you
Okay.
came to Canada, so I will teach you.
Uh-huh.
So nung dati, there was a Filipino center in a basement in Kennington Market called Kapisanan Center for Philippine Arts and Culture. And this was the greatest place. And it still exists, but not physically. They still run events. And we met in a Filipino history class.
Oh,
Yeah.
what is it about him that you...
I made
caught
fun of
your
him.
attention.
Like, you know how with girls, if you make fun of a boy, they think, oh, she loves me.
How did
So
you make
I
fun
was
of
just
him?
teasing him. Because, when you go to Kensington Market for a Filipino history class, it's just relaxed. You're just kind of
Uh-huh.
casually learning. But he came with a little vest and a notebook and a fancy pen, and he was taking notes. And of course, I just thought it was so funny. He's
Uh-huh.
he's really taking it seriously.
Which is, I think,
And-
what got you attracted
I
to
guess
him, right?
so, yeah.
It's like somebody who's taking Filipino culture seriously. Okay.
For sure, yeah, and we've been on this really big adventure together with like learning more and more about like the Filipino diaspora and learning about Filipinos here in Canada and abroad. And so like last month, for instance, we were in Quezon City, tapos Tarlac, Bulacan, Batangas City, then to see all these different family members and it's nice in a way to be with someone that like also gets what you want to learn. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's nice to
yeah.
have that. Yeah.
I was just thinking, for a woman like you with like strong visions and strong values, you must have found a partner that supports you in that same vision, or a partner who will be with you in achieving those things that you want to do. And you're also a busy woman, so he's got to be fully into it, fully into what you do and what you believe in.
He's great. Yeah,
Right?
for sure. Actually, before, like, I would always go by just Jennilee Austria in my professional name. But then now, with this book coming out, I said, you know what? Like, talagang Bonifacio ka na yan. Like, we've been married for a long time, and he's been there. For my first book, I'm going to take this name now. I'm going to hyphenate this because I want to recognize that this is not just me by myself, right? Like, you really have to have someone with you helping you to get to this point. And so I said, okay, Austria-Bonifacio na yan.
Jennilee Austria-Bonifacio. Thank you so much for your time and
Thank
being
you.
with us and sharing with us that amazing things that you do. And good luck. We're looking forward to the book. And we hope to have you again, maybe a few months after
Yeah.
today. We can chat again.
For sure. The book comes out sometime in the fall. I don't know when yet, but we'll talk later.
Yeah, we already saw it in your Facebook account, and we're looking forward to that. Thank you, Jennilee.
Thank you.
And that wraps up another hour of our podcast. Please join us again next week here on the Cherry Mercado Podcast. Bye.